I'm also sharing the slides. Please, can you see the slides? Is the slide visible?
No, please.
So I need to know if you got. Okay, so let me stop sharing and share it again. Can you see the slide now? So check your devices. So the moment you start seeing the slides, just let me know, because I'm trying different mechanisms for the slide to be visible. Okay, so we're looking at types of discourses today. And I had made some introductory remarks about discourses or passages. So let's begin. What is a discourse? Sometimes when we write, we put individual sentences together for different purposes. A collection of sentences is called a passage or discourse. So we shall discuss passages that are arguments and those that are not. So the first type of passage or discourse we are looking at today is argument. So what's an argument? A discourse is called an argument if it contains a claim or conclusion that is supported with reasons or information. So a passage that is an argument contains two things. First of all, you will notice a claim, which is also a conclusion. A conclusion is technically a claim. All conclusions are sort of claims. And then you notice statements that are providing reasons or information or evidence to support that claim. So those are the two basic components of an argument. So an argument contains at least two items: a conclusion, which could also be a claim or decision, and then expressions aimed at providing support or proof for the conclusion or decision. So those are the two components: claim and then reasons supporting the claim. Let's look at an example. This passage has three statements. One, Ghanaian men think women don't deserve to occupy high positions. Ghanaian men think women don't deserve to occupy high positions. Two, they question the competence and qualification of women who are sent to high office, but refrain from doing same to even incompetent men. Then three, therefore, Ghanaian men do not respect women. Therefore, Ghanaian men do not respect women. So notice that the first two statements, are serving as information, evidence, or reason to support the last statement, the third statement. So for attempting to support the third statement, statement 3, we call those statements, statements 1 and 2, premises. They are called premises. Then statement 3, which is being supported, is called conclusion. So you have the premises that provide reasons, information, or evidence to support the conclusion. And then you have the conclusion, which is being supported. Identifying arguments. How do we identify arguments? First of all, there is a shortcut, a certain shortcut to identifying arguments in the passage. Such shortcuts are called indicators. So we have premise indicators and we have conclusion indicators. Now, these indicators tell you that you are looking at the premise indicators tell you are words or phrases that tell you are looking at a premise. And then the conclusion indicators are words or phrases that tell you are looking at a conclusion. Now let's look at some examples of premise indicators, which tell you that the statement you are looking at is a premise. When you see a sentence starting with for, or granted that, or in view of the fact that, or in as much as, or since, or it is a fact that, or one cannot doubt that, or the statement begins with because, or the statement begins with the reason is that, or as shown by the fact that. These are premise indicators to tell you are looking at a premise. Now, in some arguments, the premises can come before the conclusion. In some arguments, the conclusion can come before the premises. So an argument can be arranged in any way. The premises can come first, or the conclusion can come first. So in those arguments where the premise comes first, you see that the first 7 examples of premise indicators are for those arguments where the premises come first. For instance, granted that, or in view of the fact that. That's what you use to begin a premise that comes before a conclusion. But there are some others that are used for premises that come after the conclusion. For instance, the reason is that. The reason is that, or because, or as shown by the fact that. These are premises that come after the conclusion. So it depends on how the conclusion and premises have been positioned. So to know that these are premise indicators. What about conclusion indicators? Conclusion indicators are, for instance, therefore, consequently, hence, asserting that, for this reason, accordingly, consequently, this being so. These are conclusion indicators. They tell you are looking at the conclusion. So there are some for conclusions that come before premises. There are some for conclusions that come after premises. It depends on how the whole thing has been positioned or framed. But you don't need indicators to identify arguments. You can identify arguments without indicators. In fact, no examiners will write indicators for you. And in some passages, you may not find indicators, even in the real world. So you have to learn to identify arguments without indicators. You learn to identify premises by observing their function. You also learn to identify conclusions by observing their function. I told you conclusions are technically claims. So when you see a claim, then you are seeing a conclusion. Or when you see a decision, you are seeing a conclusion. They are all conclusions. Then when you see statements that are providing reasons or illuminating a claim or conclusion or giving evidence to support a claim or conclusion, then those are premises. So you identify both premises and conclusions by identifying their functions. You use functions to identify interrogative sentences, imperatives, declaratives, factual statements, value statements, definitions, all those things. You use functions to identify all of those. You also use functions to identify premises and conclusions. And then if at all you see any indicators, then it just confirms what you've chosen already. Not that you rely on, you are using the indicators to, the indicators don't always appear. The indicators are just embellishments. The sentence can do without the indicators. So it is the choice of the speaker or writer to decide if you should put indicators or not. And in most cases, speakers and writers don't. They don't put indicators. So let's go to non-arguments. Not every passage or cluster of propositions is an argument. Some passages are non-arguments. They include narratives, instructional passages, rhetorical, polemic, or opinion. Okay, so let's begin with narrative. A narrative is a passage that reports a sequence of events according to the order of the events, or the order the events occurred. A passage that reports a sequence of events. So normally it's a collection of factual statements. So when you see a passage containing factual statements reporting events, sometimes in a sequence, then that's a narrative. Over the course of 2 weeks, over the course of 2 weeks, some police officers have been observed stopping and checking cars in the area between Sawam and Anyinam on their Accra Kumasi road. They extort, I can't read this, I think my platform, my minimized platform page is covering this part of my slide, so I can't say. They extort something from an abused motorist who questioned their authority. Brandishing assault rifles and dressed in heavy police gear, they don't just check cars, they also assault some motorists and passengers. So this is a collection of factual statements. We call it a narrative, reporting a sequence of events, or at least reporting events. Then you have instructional passages. This is a passage that describes a process or sequence of things to do in a specific order. It offers a list of directives. So a passage that describes a process or sequence of things to do. Things to do remind you of an imperative. It offers a list of directives to follow to accomplish some desired effects. The example below offers a list of directives on how to use a fire extinguisher. Example: pull the pin, aim the nozzle at the base of the fire. Aiming the nozzle at the top of the flame won't aiming at the top of the flame with the extinguisher won't be effective. In a controlled manner, squeeze the trigger to release the agent, and so on. So this is a collection. This passage is a collection of imperatives. So it is an instruction or a guide about how to use a fire extinguisher. A collection of imperatives is called an instructional passage. It offers a list of directives or a guideline on things to do. Then you have rhetorical polemic, a passage communicating a usually strong feeling and persuasively venting an opinion. So rhetorical polemic is to communicate feeling, sometimes strong. So communicating feeling. Example, I hate lab tests. I hate this lab test. That's an emotive expression. Every time I'm exposed to these things, I fall ill. That's a claim. I'm sure they hate me. That's an emotive expression. It's disgusting how I get sick, so that's an emotive expression. So you have three emotive expressions and one claim. So we can define a rhetorical polemic as a passage that contains emotive expressions and sometimes a claim or claims. A passage that contains emotive expressions and sometimes a claim or claims. So let's enjoy a little exercise. Name 4 types of discourses studied in this chapter. 4 types of discourses. So what are the 4 types of discourses we just discussed? Anyone, if you want to answer, you raise your hand. There's a raise of hand icon at the top of the platform. You press it and your hand is raised. And if we're running short of time, and in fact, since we're running short of time, and it will take time for you guys to answer it, I can just as well do that. So name 4 types of discourses studied in this chapter. You have argument, narrative, instructional passage, and then rhetorical polemic. What is an argument? What is an argument? An argument is a passage that contains a conclusion or claim and expressions aimed at providing reasons, information, or evidence to support the conclusion. List the components of an argument, claim, and then reasons or information to support the conclusion. Distinguish between argument and rhetorical polemic. Argument is a passage that contains a conclusion or claim and then reasons or evidence or information to support that conclusion or claim. But rhetorical polemic is a collection of a collection of emotive expressions. Rhetorical polemic is a collection of emotive expressions, sometimes accompanied by a claim or claims. So we're done with the 4 types of passages, now 2 types of disagreement. In our last class, I was explaining that before you embark on a training as a logical practitioner, you need to first of all be introduced to the 2 types of disagreement. So disagreements are in 2 categories. We have the verbal disagreement, and then you have the real or substantive disagreement. Now, that division is because most logicians don't like, or they don't feel they should spend their time in verbal disagreements. So we'll soon find out why. And so the substantive disagreement is what they have called the real disagreement. So very soon we'll see the reason for their disdain or distaste for verbal disagreements. And we can see it here. Verbal disagreement is about the meaning of a word or words. So a verbal disagreement is a disagreement about the meaning of a word or words. So it's a disagreement about what a word means. Example, that man is a fanti. No, he's an akan. That man is a fanti. No, he's an akan. You can see that the second person doesn't know that a fanti is an akan. So logicians say that this kind of disagreement arises because some people have not done their homework well to understand concepts. The second person, according to logicians, hasn't done enough homework to know that a fanti is an account. So once he understands that a fanti is an account, then the argument disappears. And then it spares humanity the energy for other endeavors. Second example, she is a Christian because she receives Holy Communion. No, she's not a Christian because she does not speak in tongues. So the disagreement here is about what Christianity means. What is the meaning of Christianity? Is it when someone receives Holy Communion that she's a Christian, or is it when someone begins to speak in tongues that she's a Christian? How do we know who a Christian is? So the meaning of being a Christian is in dispute. So logicians will say that we should sort out these meaning disputes so that the arguments will disappear. For instance, it is the task of the church authorities, it is the task of the Christian authorities to sit down and determine what being a Christian means. And that might be difficult because some pastors might have a different agenda. Okay. So these are examples of verbal disputes, and the logicians are not very, they don't like bringing out a lot of energy for verbal disagreements because they believe the arguments will disappear immediately one person understands something better. Then we go on to what they have called a real dispute or disagreement. What are the real disagreements? The substantive disagreement is about facts or values. So the real dispute is a substantive disagreement about facts or values. Example one, let's look at the first example. Accra is the capital of Ghana. No, Kumasi is the capital of Ghana. So that's a disagreement about fact, about which capital, which city is the capital of Ghana. So we solve such disagreements through verification. We solve such disagreements through verification. So we have to verify which one is the capital of Ghana. Simple. Second one is disagreement about values. Accra should be the capital of Ghana. No, Accra should not be the capital of Ghana. So this is a disagreement about values, whether Accra should or should not be the capital of Ghana. Okay, so you can see the difference between the factual and the value disagreements. And it's these two kinds of disagreements that logicians have said are the real ones, or the substantive ones, that should be worked on. A little exercise. Determine whether the following disagreement is verbal or real. Determine whether the following disagreement is verbal or real. That man is quite old. He died at 50. That man is quite old. He died at 50. You call that old? He died young. Sandra says that man is quite old. He died at 50. And then Comfort says you call that old? He died young. So what kind of disagreement is it? If you want to answer, you can raise your hand. Okay, so let's look at the disagreement. Sandra says that man is quite old. He died at 50. Comfort says you call that old. He died young. Now, the disagreement is about whether 50 is old. So, in real terms, the disagreement is about the meaning of the word old. What does old mean? Is old 50 years or is old 90 years? Or what exactly is old? So that's what the disagreement is about, the meaning of what? Old. So that makes it a verbal disagreement. Okay, so this is the end of the lecture. If you have any other questions, you can ask before I stop the recording, and then I can retrieve it to send it to your WhatsApp platform. So I hope you have created a WhatsApp platform by now. If you haven't created one, you can let me know, and then I will inform your tutor, Mr. SL. to create a WhatsApp platform for you so that we can start coordinating the course from there. So can any of you confirm whether you guys have a WhatsApp group?
Yes, it seems like there is a WhatsApp group for Group 12.
Good, good. So I would retrieve the recording so that I can send the recording. And please, did you get the recording of one of the last classes in your WhatsApp group?
No, please.
No, sir.
Okay, so you didn't get any recording. Then I'll get in touch with Mr. SL to find out if he sent it, because I think I sent him a recording of one of the last classes so that you guys can watch and get more familiar with the subject and the topics. Okay, so now I'm going to stop the recording. I'm stopping the recording so that it can be saved to my laptop.